everybody, I hope you have had a safe couple of weeks. Apologies for no video last week. I managed to get a cold which took my voice away, which as you can imagine is not great for filming. But I am back now and I have got one hell of a story to tell you. I heard of this case a few weeks ago and I am not lying, it blew my mind. Seriously, we are raised, as people, we are raised to put your trust into certain types of people in certain jobs, certain places. This story just goes to prove that you shouldn't trust anyone. If you don't know them, even if you do, I'll be honest, don't trust anyone. Before we get started, I do have to say that this video does contain extreme violence, cannibalism, religious rituals, and SA. So viewers' discretion is advised. With that said, sit back, get yourself cozy, and join me for a glimpse into a darker reality. Jason Alan Thornburg was born on the 27th of August 1980. So like many of these stories, his life started with a unstable home life. His father was fairly around, his mother was a raging alcoholic, and this led to what has been written as mild neglect. I beg to differ that I'm sure it was more than just mild. And not only did this lead to neglect, but Jason was actually born with fetal alcohol syndrome because of the amount that his mum drank during her pregnancy. It is said by people who knew him then that he was present but yet always seemed a bit distant. When he was in his 20s, he was involved in a fight which resulted in him getting some brain damage, and people who knew him said that he became even more distant and withdrawn. He ended up becoming obsessed with religion and the Bible, and as he got older he actually started to believe that God was talking to him. Now, I'm not a doctor, but I'm going to say that maybe the brain injury had something to do with that, at a guess. And of course, like many who have a direct line to God, Jason would take the word of the Bible, twist it and make it what he needed it to be. So, in 2016, Jason was living in Gallup in New Mexico when a woman called Tanya Begay moved in across the road. She was staying with relatives. She just moved back from Phoenix and she needed somewhere to stay with her and her kids. So she met Jason, who lived across the road, and instantly there was a connection. They liked each other and literally within days they were dating. Early on into their relationship, however, Jason started to abuse Tanya. Her family did know about this, and no matter how much they tried to convince her to get away from him, as is the case in most abusive relationships, Tanya just kept on going back to him. He had a hold over her, he had control of her. Then in March of 2017, so the following year, Tanya and Jason hitched a ride to Tallahatchie, also in New Mexico, to go and see Tanya's dad. They were going to ask for money. I'm guessing life wasn't treating them well at the time. I know that Jason bounced between like ideas of what he wanted to do as a job, so I'm guessing that that probably had something to do with it. While they were there, Tanya's aunt lent them her car. So they left Tallahatchie in her aunt's car. After a couple of days, she phoned home, spoke to her mother, and said they were on their way to Gallup and that they would be there very, very soon. That was the last that her mother spoke to her. Tanya never returned. Now, Jason was brought in for questioning about her disappearance, but there's no evidence, there's nothing that ties him to her disappearance, so they ended They had to let him go. There was nothing, there's no actual evidence that, like, she was dead or anything, just that she disappeared. So they let Jason go, and continued with the case. I believe the case is still open. They still haven't actually found Tanya, but I will get back to that towards the end of the story. But yeah, so they let Jason go, and then he disappeared and went off and lived his life. So then we fast forward to 2021, so that's 4 years. In the spring of 2021, a man named Mark Jewell was looking for a housemate. He needed someone to move in who could help him pay the bills. He wasn't making enough money. He was working several jobs, but it still wasn't enough to cover everything. So he interviewed people to see if he could find a roommate. Jason Thornburg turned up. This is actually in Fort Worth in Texas. He was working as an apprentice electrician at the time. And him and Mark obviously hit it off, and Mark invited him to move in. A couple of weeks later, not very long at all, in May, the fire brigade were called out because Mark's house was on fire. As you can see, the house looks absolutely gutted, but they did manage to get into the house and recover a body before it was too late to identify him. So the body was Mark Jewell's. He was unfortunately deceased, and he had had his throat slit. So it looked incredibly suspicious. It didn't look like the fire was an accident. When they looked into the fire, it was obviously arson. And as I say, Mark had obviously been murdered because his throat had been slit. But again, there was no evidence of anything. All of the evidence that there could have been destroyed in the fire. So Jason was questioned, and again, not held over this because there's nothing tying him to it. Quite literally, he could have been at work when this happened and have had nothing to do with it. So there's no reason that for them to suspect that it's him. And even if they do, there's nothing to prove it, so they can't. So then Jason moved out into the Budget Inn in Eunice in Texas. And he moved into room 10. And room 10 would go down in history as just a diabolical place. It's like a gateway to hell, I swear to you. This is where the worst part of this entire story happens. On the night of the 22nd of September 2021, at around 11 p.m, the fire brigade were called out to a dumpster fire. I'm sure they thought at the time that this was just going to be a run-of-the-mill, put the fire out, move on kind of situations. However, as they put the flames out, they started to see body remains. And I don't mean a complete body. Oh, no. That would be too simple. No. They found dismembered body parts in the dumpster. So, of course, they call the police. The police come. And it took them until 3 a.m. to collect all of the blackened, dismembered body parts. And the idea just makes me want to kind of gag, and makes me feel really, really nauseous. Can you imagine you're on your night shift, it's a regular day, you get called out to a dumpster fire, you put the fire out, and there's just blackened body remains. It just doesn't bear thinking about at all. As a person who doesn't deal with that, I just can't get my head around how you would, go about your day afterwards. It must have been harrowing for them. Using forensic science, they were able to identify that there were 3 bodies, 3 separate bodies that these parts belong to. And using several different methods, which I will come back to, they were able to locate where this had all happened. But what the fuck happened? What actually happened that resulted in 3 dismembered bodies being burnt in a dumpster fire. Well, let me tell you, it turned out that Jason Thornburg, over the space of a week, had turned room 10 into a bloody altar, and nobody in the motel had the slightest clue as to what was happening. Residents of the motel at the time may have heard things, they may have smelt things over the week, but nobody had any clue as to what was actually going on. So Thornburg met the first victim, a man called David Lueras. I think it's pronounced Lueras, but I think there might be a slightly more Spanish twinge to the name that I can't pronounce because I can't speak Spanish. So I apologise for butchering his name. Anyway, Thornburg met David when he was at a very vulnerable time in his life. He was down on his luck. He'd had some run-in with drugs. And all he needed was a friend. Someone he could lean on for, like, support. So Thornburg presented himself as a bit of a saviour to David. He was reading the Bible to him, and he offered him his room as somewhere to stay for a little while until, like, even if it was just a couple of days, just to give him somewhere to rest his head. Now, David trusted Thornburg. There's no real understanding as to why. I would like to say it's probably because he was, like, reading Bible passages to him, and that can come across as quite a trusting thing, especially if you're at a very low place. So he accepted Thornburg's invitation, and got his head down. Now, this was the biggest mistake he could have made. Thornburg came up behind him, slit the man's throat, and then held him down until every breath had left his body. So it turned out that Thornburg's delusions had got a lot worse, and he not only believed he was talking to God, but he believed that he needed to make human sacrifices to appease God. So when David had died, Jason then cut open his chest, pulled out his heart, put that to the side, then dismembered the body. He placed the dismembered body parts into a plastic bin or a big plastic storage box, put the lid on it, and then put it in the corner of the room. He then, can't believe I'm going to say this, he then took the heart, cooked some of it, and ate it. He ate the heart in order to honour the body that he had offered to God. He then left those body parts in that plastic bin in the corner of the room. So, yeah, over the space of a week, I'm going to guess the smell was getting a bit rife. So I can understand that people could smell something and not know what it is. I wouldn't know what that smell was. I mean, I don't really know what rotten meat smells like. I just know it smells bad because we get rid of our meat that we buy before it goes rotten. We eat it, we cook it, we freeze it, whatever. We don't have meat just lying around the house that goes rotten. You just don't. So it's not a familiar smell. It's just a bad smell. Anyway, so 2 days later, Thornburg met a woman called Lauren Phillips. Now, again, Lauren was down on her luck. I'm guessing that money was tight. And it said that Jason offered to fix her car. So I don't know how he went from fixing her car to convincing her to come into his room. But then again, he put himself forward as a very trustworthy character. He must have been charismatic in some way to be able to do that. But yeah, so he put himself forward. He told her he'd fix his car. So she went over to his. When she went into his room, again, he came up behind her, he slit her throat, and he held her down until she passed away. This time, After she had died, he essayed her body before dismembering her. I'm not sure if he ate any of her heart. It hasn't really been said that he did that with the other bodies, just David's. But I can guess it's probably a high possibility. He then dismembered the body again, added it to the plastic bin. Not sure if there was another bin. I'm not sure if he had a stack of bins by the end or if he just had one really big storage box. Either way, it doesn't really matter. All we know is that he chopped up Lauren's body and put her with David in the corner of his room. But he wasn't finished there. Oh, hell no, he wasn't finished. No. Jason believed that he needed to commit 3 sacrifices in order to appease God. So 2 days later, after Lauren's death, he met a woman called Maricruz Mathis and lured her back to his room. There was evidence of a message that she sent out to her friends that said going for a drink with the electrician at the motel. So there was a connection there. I can assume that they were attracted to each other, they liked each other, he invited her over for a drink, she thought it was going to be something else. Maybe he indicated that there was going to be some kind of hookup and she liked the idea of it. Whatever the case, she went to his room. This time he didn't slit her throat, he actually strangled her with his bare hands and kept going until there was no life left in her. When her body went limp, he then stabbed her repeatedly. Which, I mean, if we're going to look at it from a psychological point of view, could be quite a sexual thing, but he didn't essay her body. He then, again, dismembered her body and placed that body with the other 2 in the plastic bins in the corner of his room. He then lived in the room for another 2 days with these body parts, so David's body, who was the first person he killed, has been there for 6 days. Like, that can't smell nice. I mean, I know it's contained in a plastic box, but there's still got to be a smell emanating from that can't smell nice. But still, no one in the hotel checked the room. No one came to ask him what was happening or what the smell could be. They just kind of went about their business. And I wonder if someone had taken that time to knock on the door and talk to him as to whether maybe he'd have been found out a bit sooner. I don't know. I'm just theorizing. Anyway, so he stayed for another 2 days. And he was waiting for confirmation from God that God was happy with what had happened and that the sacrifices were over. So in the night, 2 days later, Jason then picked up the bins and took them to his car. He then proceeded to drive a mile away from the motel and put the bins into a dumpster, which he then set fire to and left and returned back to the motel. And this is when, obviously, the fire brigade came out and then they found the bodies. When they found the bodies, as I said earlier, they managed to use forensic science to identify that there were 3 people. David was identified by his tattoo, and then DNA samples were able to identify that the other 2 bodies were women. They then canvassed the local area to identify these women. They managed to find a very grainy video showing a vehicle pulling up to the dumpster and putting these plastic bins into the dumpster. They couldn't identify the person necessarily, but they were able to identify his vehicle. So then they were able to track that kind of vehicle to the motel car park and then through that and through the very bad cleaning up job that Jason had tried to do, they managed to locate Jason and it all came together. As soon as he was questioned, Thornburg sung like a fucking canary. He told the police everything. He calmly recited everything that had happened, and just told them that God had made him do it. He even said that the fire had not been to dispose of the bodies, but rather to offer them. Scarily, he was asked if he regretted anything, and he said his only regret was that he didn't do more, and that he actually thinks he was supposed to kill 7 people. So what happened after he confessed was that he actually confessed to murdering Tanya Begay and Mark Jewell. He said that these 2 were necessary sacrifices that had to be made. The one thing that is extremely disheartening for Tanya's family is that he has not ever disclosed what happened to her body. They still don't know. And whether that's because he doesn't remember where he's buried her, or he just doesn't want to give that secret up, I don't know. It must be horrible for her family to not have that closure. They now know that she is no longer alive, so that is like the first step of closure, but not having a body must be horrendous, absolutely horrendous. When it went to trial, Thornburg's defense team tried to plead insanity, and I can understand why, because it's hardly the actions of a sane person. But the prosecution team disagreed with this because he had pre-planned the murders, he had attempted to clean up afterwards, and he had set the fire. These were not the actions of somebody who had spontaneously killed somebody because they were insane. So after an intense trial, Jason Thornburg was found guilty of 3 cases of capital murder. He has not been charged for the other 2 murders, I assume because of a lack of evidence. However, they are resolved. On the 4th of December 2024, so only last December, Jason Thornburg was sentenced to death. He was sentenced to death because he is still seen as being a risk to society, even in prison. So he is currently sat on death row and he has no contact with any other inmates. They don't want any of his beliefs passed on to anybody else. Which is freaky as fuck, if you ask me. I mean, it's terrifying what he did. But the idea that he could manipulate other people to possibly like carry out his bidding, to continue his work, so to speak, is terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. So that is the case of Jason Thornburg. As I said, he is currently sat on death row. He has no contact with other inmates. He is still with us and we await the date of his death. Not the nicest of stories, but then they're never going to be. But I felt a compulsion to tell this story because it's like somebody who is in what would be seen as a role of trust. You trust people who are religious because religious people are not supposed to do harm. We grow up believing that we can trust these people, and just the idea that he gained their trust and then slaughtered them as a so-called sacrifice is just absolutely fucking diabolical, really. Absolutely diabolical. And yeah, I just felt a compulsion to share that with you all. Thank you all for being here. I do appreciate your views. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do. And if you enjoyed the video, please drop a like because it helps with the algorithm and it helps my videos get seen a bit more. Until next time, guys, I hope you have a safe week. Look after yourselves. Please look after each other. And I will see you soon.